back of my neck stand right up. And every time I watch it, I keep thinking, maybe this time I'm going to beat him. But many people think that because of that race, running a 208 marathon, that I came out of my mother's womb with a pair of running shoes on, and I was a great runner in high school and on to college and on to the Olympics and so on and so forth. But I tell you, I got started, a lot like maybe you folks did. I went out for running when I was 17 years old as a junior in high school. I wasn't very good. I didn't make the varsity team until my senior year, and then I went to a small agricultural college, a little 2-year college, but they happened to have a cross-country and track program, and I learned a lot there, and I found out that the further I ran, the better I seemed to do. So in 1977, I'm in college, and I decided, I'm going to run a marathon. How hard can it be? Now, I'd never run that up to maybe 10 miles at that point, but I thought, it's only another 16 more miles. I should do this in kilometers, but I'm not quick enough to do that right now. But anyhow, so I ran a race in Wisconsin, state of Wisconsin, called the Paavo Nurmi Marathon. Has anybody ever heard of Paavo Nurmi? He was a great Olympian and runner from Finland. And they named this race after him because this little town in northern Wisconsin,
the Flying Finn.
The Flying Finn. It was a little Finnish community. Well, I ran that race in 1977. I was 21 years old. I finished, but when I finished, I remember thinking, I am never, ever running another marathon again. I hurt in places I never thought a human body could hurt. So that fall, I'm back off to college. And what I would do every morning before my classes would start is I'd jump out of my bed in my dorm room, I'd go downstairs, I'd buy the Minneapolis paper, I'd bring it up to my room, and I'd read the sports section before class. So this Tuesday morning, I jump out of bed, I go down, I buy a paper, I bring it up to my room, I pull up the sports section, and I'm going through it when all of a sudden, there was a little box ad in the corner of the paper that caught my eye. It was an ad for the City of Lakes Marathon. It's what the Twin Cities Marathon is today. It's a very big race. But I saw that little box ad, and for some reason I thought, I'm going to run that thing. Now the problem was, I hadn't been running that much, and it was Tuesday, and the race was coming up on Sunday. I'm not going to class for the rest of the morning, and I had 2 boxes underneath my dorm room bed filled with running magazines. I thought, there has got to be an article in one of these magazines on how to train for a marathon in 5 days. I'm looking through these darn magazines and there's nothing close to a 5-day program. Well, I'm getting towards the bottom of the box when I come across the article about these guys and gals, and they didn't just run marathons, they ran ultras, like 100 kilometers, 200 kilometer type races. And one of the guys said that when he ran them, he felt like he was floating like a butterfly. Thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to float like a butterfly. And then unfortunately, I read his next sentence and I stopped. He said one of the ways or reasons he felt he ran so well and felt like a butterfly was that he fasted. He didn't eat for a week. So I thought, well, gosh, I don't got a week, but I got 5 days. I didn't eat anything on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. I get up Sunday morning, I drive into the Twin Cities, I get out of my vehicle, it's a perfect day to run, very cool, clear skies, no wind, I put on my running shoes, and I'm thinking, okay, Dan, now you know you always run your best races when you've done a good, solid warm-up. And before that Paavo Nurmi Marathon, I hardly warmed up at all. I just kind of went to the start line and started running. So I took off running. By the time I got done with the run that morning, I had run about almost 15 kilometers in the morning. But I was raring to go. I was sweating, and I'm thinking, okay, now you're nice and loose. Head up towards that start line. So I get up towards the start line, I'm thinking, all right, Richard, you need to find some people that are experienced at this thing called the marathon. Guys that know what they're doing and run with them. So I'm looking around towards the front, and I see a couple of guys that I recognize because I read about them and saw their pictures in the paper a couple of days before. One of the guys was a sub 220 marathoner. The other guy was like a 225 marathoner, but between the two of them, they run like 20 of them things. So I thought, well, those guys must know what they're doing. I'll just run with them. So I sneak up to the front. I sneak up to the front, and the gun goes off. Off we go. We go through the first mile in 5 minutes and 5 seconds.
Oh my God.
I'm within 10 seconds of my personal all-time best for the mile at that point. But I'm feeling like $1 million. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't need to train for these marathons. You just don't eat for 5 days. Now going in to that race, what would have been a good goal to have? Finish. Yeah, finish. Have a smile on my face and know maybe next time I could run a little bit faster. Good goal, right? Not me. My goal that day was top 10. If you finished in the top 10, you got a trophy. Now, this is 1977. I don't even think they had running trophies back then. You know what you got? You got a bowling trophy. You ever seen a bowling trophy? It looks just like a runner. All they did was snap off the bowling. And I wanted one of those trophies. So we're going along. I'm in that lead pack. All of a sudden, 3 miles, into the race, everybody heads over towards these card tables set up with drink cups on them. They start grabbing water, drinking it down. I'm thinking, those stupid fools, what are they doing? When I was growing up, I read somewhere that you can't drink water when you run because it'll give you a side ache. Well, just the opposite is true, but I went the entire way without not one drop of water. Now I'm only 3 miles into this thing. How many mistakes have I already made? There, things are going well, but by about 7-8 miles, my feet start getting really hot. By 8 miles, I look down, and the blue shoes I were wearing had a real pretty purple tinge to the toes. My feet were blistering and bleeding. I'm thinking, what's going on? I've never had a blister in my life, and why today? What could be the reason? And I thought, and I'm not making this up, the day before, I walked into a running store. I tried on a pair of Nike Waffle trainers. That's the shoe that they had back then. I put them on my feet. I jumped up and down, ran a little bit in place, took them off, put them in the box. I said, as I laid them on the counter, I'll take them. The guy says, well, listen, buddy, don't you want to wear them around, break them in a little bit? I said, nope, I'm running a marathon tomorrow morning, and I don't want to get them dirty. So, shoes were not like shoes today, where you can almost take them out of the box and go for a run. But by mile, 9 or 10, my feet were bleeding, they went down, and now I'm feeling pretty good again. Well, at about 14 miles, I fall off the back end of that lead group. I just couldn't hang with them anymore, but I was still in fourth, well within the top 10 to get my little trophy. 15 miles comes along, 16, 17, 18. I wasn't thinking about a whole lot, but I remember reading in one of the magazines about this thing that happened supposedly at around the 20-mile mark. But this article said, if you don't think about it, it ain't gonna happen. And honest to goodness, I'm coming up under the 20-mile mark. I swear some guy just must have jumped out of the bed that morning with his PJ still on and a can of blue spray paint and wrote 20 miles, you're at the wall. And I'm thinking, this is it. This is where my legs break like a toothpick. This is where I'm gonna fall apart, but it didn't happen. I felt pretty good. 21 miles, feeling good. 23, not bad. At 23 miles, I go by the start-finish line. All I gotta do is run around this lake back to where I just crossed, and I'm done. And I say to myself with this big smile on my face, Richard, you've got it made. You guys, I'm telling you, I don't care if the finish line of the marathon is from here to the start of that couch right there. You never say you have it made until you actually cross that finish line. Because about 2 strides later, my perfect little world started coming to an abrupt end. I mean, I started cramping in my quads, my hands, my calves, my toes. I was cramping so bad my ears were cramping up on me. Every step I took, I was really concerned that it might be the last step I ever take. I was running so bad. I was running with my eyes shut because it hurt to have them open. And every once in a while, when I would open them to make sure I was on the right side of the road, I'd see all these old guys just flying by me, and I'm thinking, there goes my trophy. They still have another 8.5 miles to go. I didn't know that at the time, but I finally get to the finish line. I cross it, and I collapse. Next thing I know, officials have me laying on a park bench, and they're trying to get me to drink some water and some food in me, and every once in a while when I open my eyes, I see these TV cameras pointing down at this guy laying on his bench. And later that day, some of my friends came up to me and they go, Beards, you were laying on that park bench. We didn't know if you were dead or alive. And every once in a while, you'd look up, you'd throw up your arms, you'd holler, trophy, trophy! And then I'm laying on this bench, and I hear from the announcing area at the stage, in 7th place, Dick Beardsley. And I'm telling you, I popped up off that bench, and I was smiling. And as I walked up on that stage, I felt like Frankenstein. I walked like this. I could not bend my knees. Honest to goodness. I got up there, and I got my little trophy. Now, have you all run a marathon? Have any of you not? Oh, you all have. You know what I'm talking about. So I turned around, I walked back over to the stage, to the stairs. I could not walk down forward. For the next week I had to walk down like this. And after that race, I really swore I would never ever run another marathon. Thankfully, the good Lord helps us forget about some of the bad things in our lives. And I got over that, and I shortly after came to realize that to be successful in the marathon, you have to train for it. And even then, it's probably the most difficult race there is. I run with the group this morning, and I told them it's the perfect distance to test the body and the soul. If it was any longer, it would be too far. If it was any shorter, it wouldn't be far enough. I mean, it really does test everything about a human being. So congratulations to all of you. And it doesn't matter. Listen, you look at that, that video of Zellzor and I, it looks like we're just cruising along feeling really good. Let me tell you, the last 5 miles of that race, it was brutal. When that race started, every time we start that finish line, especially in a marathon, we're hoping everything comes together. And all of a sudden when it doesn't, sometimes what happens, we get some negative thoughts on my day, and it's like, you start thinking of excuses to make. And I remember that day as the gun went off and Salazar shot out of there like he was shot out of a rocket ship. And I was right along his side. And we went through that first mile. 4 minutes and 33 seconds, the first mile. And I'm hanging on for dear life. And let me tell you, hanging on when you still have 25.2 miles to go. Hanging on with a mile ago is a different story, but when you still got 25 plus. But again, reinforced all the hard training I got, and I'm going to be good. I did the second mile, and I felt worse than I did the first time. And again, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to feel better. Just hang in there. Well, when I hit the third mile, and I'm about one of the most positive people you ever meet. When I hit the third mile, I felt so bad. At that point, I thought about dropping out. There was nothing wrong with me, nothing hurt. I just didn't have my rhythm. Could you imagine how different my life would be today if I had made up some cockamamie excuse and dropped out? I'll guarantee you I wouldn't be here. I would have never met Jim or Carol, never gone to the Philippines, mean, it's those moments that every one of us face, whether it be in a race or in life, when you don't think you can take that next step, but you know what? You do. And then you take another one and another. And I thought, no, Dick, you got to hang in there. And I did. And I hit mile 4. And you know what? I didn't feel any better. But I didn't feel any worse. And at that point, it was a huge confidence builder for me. And then as that group of us that I was in with Salazar and some of the best runners ever assembled in a marathon were in that group. Pretty soon they started falling off though, until we got to the 17-mile point on that course, so a little before 30 kilometers. And there were 2 guys left in the lead. Salazar, the world record holder, and there's a paper in the Boston area dubbed me the day before. They called me Dick Beardsley, the country bumpkin from Minnesota. Nobody gave me, or for that matter, anybody else much of a chance against Salazar. But listen to your coach. He's sitting right over there. He knows what he's talking about.
Listen to this, very important.
My coach, Bill Squires, who was my coach back then, he says to me, Dickie, because he always called me Dickie, when you get to the hills, which you do right after you turn at 17 miles, he says, if you're in that lead group or close to it, I want you to run up those hills as hard as you can. And on the back side of it, go down a little bit even harder. So I turned at that right, Salazar was right behind me. I ran that first hill trying to shake him, didn't happen. Second hill, up and down, trying to shake him as hard as I could, didn't happen. Third hill, same thing, and then finally we got to the infamous, probably all heard of it, Heartbreak Hill. Very long, steep hill. I ran up that son of a gun as hard as I could, trying to shake him. I got to the top, and I gave a little glance, and I could see Alberta right over my shoulder. So on the back side of it, it's a long, gradual downhill. I ran as hard as I could, trying to break him. I felt like I was running a 100-meter dash. I got to the bottom where it flattened out. I didn't have to look behind me. I could hear him breathing. That's how close he was. And at that point, I could no longer feel my legs. The thought of having to run another 8 or 10 kilometers at that pace was almost making me sick to my stomach. But I knew this. Of course, I was putting it into miles in my head, but I knew this. I knew no matter how bad I was hurt, I knew I could suck it up enough to go one more mile. And back then we didn't have gels and goos and jelly beans and all those things you can eat to help you kind of get it through those last few miles. But the one thing you have on you with you 24/7, as long as you walk the face of the earth, that works better than anything you can consume, and it's that stuff right between that ear and that ear called the brain. And it's powerful stuff. If you let it do its job and work for you, it's amazing what it can do for you. And my brain was able to convince my body that, you don't have to run another 8 kilometers. All you got to do is run one more mile. So that's all I had to do. I'm thinking, I can do that. Next thing I know, I get to the 22nd mile. I'm still in the lead. Not by much, but I'm still in the lead. Just one more mile, Dick. Bam, there's a 23rd mile. I said it again. There's a 24th. Still got that little bit of a lead. And then as long as I live, this will be etched in my memory forever. At the 25-mile point, in blue and gold paint on that ground in front of me, it said 25.2 miles. And right below that, it said 1 mile to go. At that point, I got so weak-kneed and rubber-legged, I honestly was wondering if I'd be able to take another step. The emotions were so overcoming. For some reason, tears just started streaming down my cheeks. And for some reason, I flashed back. And that exact moment, to May of 1975, when I walked off my high school stage, the first one in my family to get a high school diploma. And I walked out to where my mom and dad were sitting, and my dad, who had an 8th grade education, he was crying. I'd never seen him cry before. And I handed my dad my diploma, and he handed me an envelope. And he said, "Dee, this is your graduation gift from your mom and I." So I opened it up, and I pulled out some piece of paper, and my dad made great handwriting. It said D, he always called me D. D, this is good for round trip airfare to the Boston Marathon. Maybe someday you'll want to run it. Love. Gosh, sorry, my folks are both gone. I love Mom and Dad. Here I am not only winning it, I am winning it. And I knew my folks were back home in Minnesota watching it on television. I'm thinking, Dick, you have got to get your mind off your mom and dad. Think about something else, anything. You know what I thought of? I thought back to a terrible blind date I went on. I knew that would come in handy someday. And it did. I got my mind off my mom and dad back into the race, and with about 900 meters to go. So think about that. That's just a little over 2 laps around the local college or high school track. I had the biggest lead I'd had all day long, about an arm length and a half. And I knew Alberto didn't have a great finishing kick at the end, but I knew it was a lot better one than I had. And so with that, I remember pushing off with my right leg to get one last hard surge, and as I did, I got a terrible cramp in my hamstring. I mean, it just knotted up on me. And as you saw in the video, all of a sudden Alberto went flying by me like 5 meters, 10, 20, at one point almost a 100-meter lead. And I remember thinking, I thought I was having a bad nightmare. This can't be happening. I'm so close to finishing and perhaps winning the greatest marathon in the world. And now I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to take the next step. And I think, okay, just as long, and I kept thinking, okay, Dave, as long as you're moving forward towards that finish line, there's always that hope. You can't give up on it now. And so many emotions went through my mind, and I learned so much in those last 2 minutes of that race that has helped me 100 times over, more than it did in that 1982 Boston Marathon. What I learned on that street 33 years ago, coming up in April, is that no matter how difficult the situation you're in is, no matter how high the so-called mountain is to climb, is that you never ever give up on yourself. As long as you're moving forward towards that finish line, so-called finish line, even if it's little bitty baby steps, there's always that hope. It's about that determination that you put into the event, the dedication that you've committed yourself to. It's about having faith. It's about being in the right place. Well, I was in the right place at the right time. I'm running along the best I can, and on the right-hand side of the road, Alberto's continuing to get further down. The crowd moved back to let me come by, and as they did, my right foot came down into a pothole. I was in the street, I didn't see it. I hit it and I stumbled and almost fell. But when I almost fell, my right leg, it jerked it, and it popped the nut right out. Now I had my stride back, and I'm thinking, okay, if I finish second and give it my very, very best, I can hold my head high. But if I don't give it everything I have, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And I remember I started pumping my arms and lifting my legs, and the next thing I know, I felt like I was on a magic carpet. And as you saw in the video there, as we turned off onto what they called Hereford Street, where that Bob LaBelle, the last announcer that kind of took over, we turned onto there, and as Bob LaBelle goes, Alberto Salazar is outdueled Dick Beardsley, presumably he's going to win the 1982 Boston Marathon. But about the time he says that, here comes a little skinny kid from Minnesota with that goofy waiter cap on his head. But watch Beardsley, he's making a move, but the motorcycle's got to get out of the way. I could have so used that as an excuse. I mean, honestly, it would have been a ticket to who knows where. But not once did I ever think that or use that. I've had plenty of people say, oh, Dick, if it wasn't for those motorcycles, you would have beat him. We don't know if I would have beat him. Did the motorcycles get in the way? Oh, maybe a little bit. As you saw in the video, I got around him. And what did I do? I caught back up to him. And then, like I was telling some of the runners today, I think the one mistake I did perhaps make is that when I got back up to Alberto, I used so much energy to get back there that I thought, okay, catch up to him, kind of sit back for just a millisecond, catch your breath, and start sprinting. what should I have done? When I had caught up to him with that momentum I had, it just continued to go as hard as I could. When I sat back for a millisecond, bam! He started his finishing kick. By the time I responded, I was already gapped a little bit. And then if you saw at the end there, I started reeling him back in, but we just, ran out of time. And that day, we were both fortunate to break the American record and the Boston record. And it was the first time 2 men had ever gone under 2 hours and 9 minutes in the same marathon. But what is so neat, as you saw in the video, we were two young American boys that were trying to bury each other out there. I mean, seriously, I was doing everything I could to put him 6 feet under. I mean, seriously, I was doing everything I could legally to just put that hand in the hurt bank as best I could. But and he was doing the same to me. But yet when we finished, as you saw, we gave each other a big hug, congratulating each other on a race well run. And you also saw, as Alberto was up on the podium getting the laurel wreath, that's a coveted award in sports, to get that laurel wreath for winning the Boston Marathon. And as you saw, he pulled me up there on that podium with him. And when they raised his arm in victory, he was raising mine right along with it. And like he told reporters afterwards, he told me, he said, today I won the race, but Dick Beardsley didn't lose. So, when you get out for the next time and run that marathon or whatever it is you're going to do, if you know at the end of the day that you gave it your very, very best, sometimes giving it your very best, you finish so-called first. Some days second, some days third, some days maybe dead last. But if you know that on that day you gave it your best effort, you can hold your head high and have a huge smile on your face. That's what it's about. Do you have any questions or anything? I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. Listen, if not, I've got it. But I know it's getting late. And we all got to cover it home. But I got a couple of shirts now. They're used, but they're clean. Okay, I just one is I hosted a running camp back in Minnesota. One's a Dick Beardsley marathon running camp shirt, and the other one in my hometown. It's a little town in northwestern Minnesota. In 1995, a couple of my buddies, we got together one day because they wanted to put on a road race, and they wanted to do a half marathon. I go, oh great. They go, so we're trying to come up with a name, and where I'm from, there's thousands literally of lakes in the area. So I'm coming up with all these names, and they look at each other and go, we're kind of hoping you could call it the Dick Beardsley half marathon. And so it's not like I said, hey, we're having this half marathon and you're naming it after me. It wasn't like anything like that at all. But this next year will be our 20th anniversary, and we're actually they're adding a marathon, Dick Beardsley marathon. But anyhow, I've got a shirt from the 2009 one, and so I'm going to give 2 of these away. And let me ask you a couple trivia questions. Okay. What town did and I mentioned this in my little chat. What town did I run my very first marathon in? Huh? What did you say? That's a state, but what town in Wisconsin?
Attention to detail.
Jim's big on that. Okay, let me ask you this. What was the name of that marathon?
How old are we?
Who said it? Right there. Which one do you want?
I like this one.
This one here?
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, sure, you betcha. And then, let's see, one last question. Let me think. Okay. So next month, I'm going to be 59. What day is my Tuesday. I said what date? Let me give you a hint. In the United States, it's considered the first full day of spring.